The first time I saw my husband kiss another woman's name, I told myself it was grief. The fifth time, I realized it was betrayal. He ran his fingers over the carved letters like they still breathed. Margaret Lynn Coleman, beloved wife and angel above. Then he whispered, "I'll see you next week, sweetheart," kissed the stone, and walked back to the car as if I wasn't standing right there beside him. It was a bright Saturday morning, blue sky, birds chirping, and my husband of 6 years, my husband, had just kissed his first wife's grave like a living mistress. I didn't say a word until we got home. He poured himself coffee, humming softly. "It's good for me to visit her," he said casually. "Keeps me grounded." I nodded, even though my stomach burned. "You visit every Saturday, Frank. That's a lot of grounding." He shrugged, smiling the way men smile when they're done with a conversation. "It's routine. Some people golf. I visit Margaret." But I couldn't shake the way he lingered at that grave, the way he talked to her. Like he wasn't remembering her, he was still living with her. And that's when the greed crept in, small, slippery, dressed as love. Because Frank never mentioned Margaret's will. Not once. Not until I found the papers tucked behind our tax files. A tidy account, Margaret L. Coleman Memorial Trust Fund, with $420,000 in assets. And Frank was listed as sole beneficiary, set to receive full liquidation upon Margaret's 10th death anniversary. I did the math. That date was 6 weeks away. I couldn't breathe. 10 years married to her, 6 to me, and now I knew why he visited her grave like a ritual. He wasn't mourning. He was counting down. Still, I didn't confront him right away. I wanted to believe there was more. But that night, when he left his phone charging by the bed, I saw her name again. Margaret, 10 years this June, red heart. Not a contact, but a calendar reminder. It hit me then, he wasn't grieving a woman, he was worshipping a payday. Over the next few weeks, he grew colder. Short answers. Late nights. Secret calls from the garage. When I asked what was wrong, he said, "Don't start drama, Ellen. You wouldn't understand what real love feels like." Real love. From a man who measured devotion in inheritance. But what hurt most wasn't the greed, it was the disrespect. I had cleaned his mother's house, cooked his meals, stayed through layoffs and broken promises. I'd been a living, breathing woman, and somehow, I was still second to a tombstone. Then one Saturday, I followed him. He brought flowers, not from our garden, but the kind Margaret liked, yellow lilies. He knelt, spoke softly for almost an hour, and then took out his phone and snapped a picture. Later, I watched him upload it. 10 years this June, my darling. You're still my forever. Thousands of likes. Dozens of comments. And all I could think was, your forever has a bank account, Frank. The next day, his phone buzzed with a message. He was in the shower. I shouldn't have looked, but betrayal makes you brave. It was from his lawyer. Everything will be finalized by the 14th. After the funds transfer, we can discuss merging accounts. Merging accounts. He wasn't just waiting to cash out her trust, he was planning to combine it with mine. Everything I'd worked for, my savings, my late father's house, would become part of his little empire. That was the day I stopped being the grieving wife's shadow. That was the day I started digging. I began small. A cup of coffee by the cemetery gatekeeper. "How long you been keeping these grounds?" I asked. He grinned, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Since the late 90s. Margaret Coleman, now that was a funeral. Big crowd. You her kin?" "Not exactly," I said, smiling. "Her husband remarried. I'm just curious." He shrugged. "Her folks paid for a double plot. He wanted to be buried beside her. Romantic, huh?" I forced a laugh. "Yeah, romantic." But inside, I was already planning how to destroy that dream. I returned the next week when Frank was out running errands. It was a quiet morning. The cemetery empty, dew clinging to the grass. I stood by the stone, staring down at that name, Margaret Lynn Coleman. The woman he couldn't stop loving, the ghost who still ruled his wallet and his heart. And for the first time, I didn't feel jealous. I felt curious. Something about her grave looked too new. The soil around the base was smoother than the others. The flowers always fresh, like someone replaced them daily. I knelt down, pressing my fingers into the dirt. Soft. Almost loose. That's when it hit me, he wasn't just visiting. He was hiding something. So I went back after dark. Gloves. Small shovel. Flashlight. The air was thick and still. My heart pounded so loud it drowned out the crickets. Every scoop of soil made the world quieter, smaller, until I hit something hard. I brushed the dirt away, expecting wood, maybe stone. But it wasn't a coffin. It was metal. A box. Old, rusted, and locked with a clasp. My hands shook. I pried it open with the shovel edge. Inside were papers, sealed envelopes, photos, and one small velvet pouch. The top envelope read, "If anything happens to me, look here." Signed, Margaret L. Coleman. I didn't open it right then. I just stared, frozen, my flashlight trembling in my hand. Whatever was inside, it wasn't meant for Frank. And I knew, deep in my bones, it was the key to everything he'd been hiding. I slipped the box into my tote bag, covered the soil back up, and whispered, "Rest easy, Margaret. I'll finish what you started." When I got home, Frank was asleep on the couch, phone in his hand, screen glowing with an email draft. To Margaret's estate office, confirming fund release date. The next morning, I'd open that letter. And whatever I found inside would end this marriage, and maybe the man himself. Because he thought I was second place. He was about to learn I'd been playing first all along. The morning after I dug up Margaret's grave, the house felt too still, like it knew what I'd done. Frank was humming in the shower, same old Saturday tune, while the metal box sat hidden beneath the kitchen sink wrapped in an old towel. I poured coffee with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. Every clink of the spoon sounded like guilt. But guilt wasn't the right word, not anymore. Curiosity had already burned it away. When the shower stopped, I slipped quietly into the laundry room, knelt down, and pulled out the box. The lock was weak and snapped open with a kitchen knife. Inside were 4 envelopes and a velvet pouch. Each envelope was labeled in tidy cursive. For Frank. For my parents. For Attorney J. Lawson. For whoever finds this. That last one made my heart skip. Whoever finds this. My name wasn't on it, but it felt written for me. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single page, folded twice. The paper was yellowed and smelled faintly of damp roses. If you're reading this, you found what Frank was never meant to touch. He will tell the world he loved me, but love shouldn't hurt the way his did. If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. My breath caught. He keeps things buried where no one looks. Start with the garage. Behind the paint cans. I was never brave enough to dig, but maybe you will be. I dropped the page. My pulse roared in my ears. Frank's footsteps echoed down the hallway. I stuffed the letter into my robe pocket and slid the box back into the cabinet just as he appeared, hair damp, towel around his shoulders. "Morning, babe," he said, kissing my cheek. "You look pale. You okay?" "Didn't sleep well," I murmured. He grinned. "You worry too much. We're fine. Everything's falling into place." Falling into place. For him, maybe. He left an hour later to pick up flowers for the cemetery. As soon as his truck disappeared down the road, I went straight to the garage. The paint cans sat neatly on the top shelf. Behind them, just like Margaret wrote, was a wooden panel slightly off color from the rest of the wall. I pried it loose with a screwdriver. Inside the hollow space was a small safe. Combination lock. Old style. I tried our anniversary date, wrong. His birthday, wrong. Then I remembered, on every bill, every password, he used one number, 0605. Margaret's birthday. Click. The door swung open. Inside, stacks of cash, some old jewelry, a worn leather notebook, and a manila folder stamped insurance claim, confidential. I flipped it open. Policyholder, Margaret L. Coleman. Beneficiary, Franklin J. Coleman. Amount, $500,000. Cause of death, accidental fall, domestic. Except someone had drawn a faint line through accidental fall and written question beside it. My hands went cold. If Margaret hadn't died by accident, what had Frank done? I grabbed the notebook. Inside were scribbles, Frank's handwriting. Expenses, dates, little notes. Em called her lawyer again. She's restless. Talked to Doc about medication. Cleanup done 6/10. Cleanup. There were stains on the page, dark, smudged, like old rust. That's when the garage light flicked on. Ellen. I froze. Frank stood in the doorway, holding a bouquet of lilies. What are you doing? He asked. I forced a smile, heart racing. Just organizing the shelf. Thought we could make more space for the tools. He stared at me, eyes flicking toward the paint cans. For a moment, I thought he saw the open panel. Then he smiled. You always did love cleaning things up. He set the flowers down, kissed my forehead, and walked back inside. I waited until the sound of the TV started before sliding the panel back into place. That night, I couldn't sleep. The letter. The policy. The notebook. Each piece painted a darker picture. I needed proof, something solid enough to show a lawyer. So I called the name on the envelope, Attorney J. Lawson. The number was still active. Lawson Law Offices, a woman answered. I found a letter from one of your former clients, I said. Margaret Coleman. Silence. Then, ma'am, who are you to Mrs. Coleman? I'm her husband's current wife. A pause, longer this time. Mrs. Coleman, she said slowly, if you found her letter, you need to come in. Now. I drove there the next morning before Frank woke up. The office was a narrow brick building downtown, the kind of place that smells like paper and secrets. Attorney Lawson was older than I expected, silver hair, dark suit, clear eyes. He looked at the letter I handed him and nodded grimly. I drafted this for her, he said. Margaret came to me 2 weeks before her death. She was afraid. Afraid of what? He sighed. Her husband. She claimed he'd been switching her medication, mild doses of sleeping pills she didn't need. Said he wanted to make her quiet. She wanted to file for separation, but she never made it that far. I felt my stomach twist. You think he killed her? He didn't answer directly. The coroner ruled it accidental, a fall down the basement stairs. But she was found with a bruise around her neck inconsistent with a fall. I tried to contest it, but Frank threatened a lawsuit. The case closed. He opened a drawer and pulled out a file. She left me one backup document. A second insurance policy, voided when she died. She changed the beneficiary from Frank to her parents 3 days before the accident. But the claim went through. Exactly. I drove home shaking. Every smile, every kiss, every Saturday visit now felt like a performance staged over guilt and money. When I got back, Frank's truck was gone. He'd left a note on the counter. Went to the cemetery early. Wanted some alone time. Alone time. I laughed bitterly. Sure, Frank. Go talk to your gold mine. Then I looked at the clock, 11:10 a.m. If I hurried, I could catch him. The cemetery was nearly empty. Wind pushed dry leaves across the path. I parked behind the chapel and walked quietly toward Margaret's grave. Frank was kneeling there, whispering again. The flowers beside him looked familiar, the lilies from our kitchen. You'd be proud of me, he murmured. Everything's done. She doesn't suspect a thing. He chuckled softly. You'd like Ellen. She cleans up nice. But she's not you. He touched the gravestone. After next week, it'll all be ours again. My vision blurred red. I stepped forward, gravel crunching under my shoes. He turned, startled. Ellen. Jesus, you scared me. I forced a smile. Didn't mean to interrupt your date. He laughed nervously. You shouldn't sneak up like that. I knelt beside him, brushing dust off the stone. You come here every week to talk to her, huh? He shrugged. Habit. I looked him dead in the eye. Does she ever talk back? He froze. What's that supposed to mean? Maybe she'd tell you to stop lying to her grave. His expression shifted. Ellen, what are you talking about? I stood up. I know about the insurance. The lawyer. The notebook in the garage. For a moment, I thought he'd deny it. Instead, his jaw tightened. You went through my things? I went through her things. Silence. The kind that hums before lightning. Then he smiled, slow, cold. You shouldn't have done that. I stepped back. Neither should you. He took a breath, lowering his voice. You don't understand. Margaret was sick. She was going to leave me, and she didn't know what she was doing. I just helped things move faster. My stomach turned. You helped her die? I helped her find peace, he snapped. And now you're ruining everything. I laughed, a sharp, broken sound. No, Frank. I'm finishing what she started. He lunged forward to grab my wrist, but I pulled away. Don't touch me. Ellen, listen. No, I said, stepping back toward the car. You're done talking. Next Saturday, you can visit your own grave. His face went white. What did you say? Figure of speech. I smiled faintly. But if I were you, I'd call my lawyer. When I drove away, my hands were shaking but my heart felt strangely light. The next morning I copied everything, the letter, the insurance files, the notebook pages, and sent them to Attorney Lawson. He called within hours. Mrs. Coleman, this is enough to reopen the case. I'm contacting the police. Do it, I said. Then I opened Margaret's final envelope, the one labeled for Frank. Inside was a photo of the two of them, smiling at the lake, and a note in her graceful handwriting. If love is what you call this, I hope it haunts you more than it ever held you. That night, I left the box on the kitchen table for him to find. Beside it, I placed a single flower, yellow lily, and a note of my own. You said you wanted to be buried beside her. Careful what you wish for. The night after I left the metal box on the kitchen table, I didn't sleep. Every sound in the house felt like a clock ticking towards something final. Around 2 a.m, I heard Frank's footsteps downstairs, then the metallic click of the box lid opening. For a few seconds there was silence, heavy, drawn out, and then a whisper that cut through it. Where did you get this? He didn't come upstairs. He didn't even call my name. By morning, the box was gone, but in its place sat a sticky note on the counter. We need to talk. F. That was when I knew he wasn't running. He was recalculating. At 8 a.m., I called Attorney Lawson. He found the evidence, I said. He took the box. Good, Lawson replied. Let him. It ties him to possession of it. If he hides or destroys anything, that's obstruction. His voice softened. Ellen, how far are you willing to go? I looked at my reflection in the kitchen window, my own face older and harder than I remembered. All the way. Then record everything, he said. He'll reach out again. He won't be able to help himself. Frank texted 2 hours later. Dinner. 7 o'clock. Let's end this stupid drama. I typed one word back, fine. Then I called Linda, my friend from church. She never liked Frank's polished charm. I need a favor, I said. Bring your phone. Leave it recording. Ellen, she whispered, what are you planning? Proof, I said. By 6:30, the house smelled of roast chicken and tension. 2 plates, wine glasses, cloth napkins, the performance of a normal evening. Frank arrived dressed too nicely for an apology, navy shirt, gold watch, hair slicked back. Looks cozy, he said, kissing the air near my cheek. I poured the wine. It's a special night, I said. He raised his glass. To new beginnings. Or endings, I murmured. His smile faltered. You shouldn't have gone through Margaret's things. She told me to, I said quietly. He froze. What? I took out the folded letter. I found what she left behind. And I know what you did. He leaned back, eyes cold. You don't know anything. Then why are you shaking? The fork trembled in his hand before he set it down. You think anyone will believe you? Margaret's been gone 10 years. It's your word against mine. I smiled faintly. Then maybe you should tell your side on camera. His head jerked up. What did you say? I nodded toward the corner where Linda's phone sat blinking red. He went white. You're recording me? I'm protecting myself. He stood abruptly, voice rising. You're insane, Ellen. Tell that to the judge. He started toward the phone, but Linda stepped from the hallway. Touch it, and I'll call 911. He froze again, trapped between rage and fear. You think this will stick? He hissed. You think you can ruin me? No, I said. You already did that yourself. Something inside him broke. He dropped into the chair and laughed, low and bitter. She wanted to leave me, he said. Said she couldn't breathe around me anymore. So I helped her stop breathing. Is that what you want to hear? Linda gasped. I didn't move. Say it again, I whispered. He met my eyes. She fell down the stairs. I just made sure she didn't get up. The air turned to ice. Linda stopped the recording, hands trembling. That's enough, she said softly. Frank realized too late what he'd done. You'll never use that, he said. No one will believe a shaky phone video. Maybe not, I said. But they'll believe the missing page from the police report. The one you deleted. Lawson found it, the one that mentions the bruising on her neck. He stared at me like the floor had just dropped away. What? It's over, Frank, I said. And now we have your voice confirming it. For the first time, he looked scared. Not angry, just small and scared. He left that night without a word. I knew he wasn't done. Men like him never end things cleanly. They regroup. The next morning, my email pinged. Withdrawal request pending, $62,000. I called Lawson. He's trying to move the money. Let him, Lawson said. It's being monitored. Once he moves it, we'll trace it straight to the trust. He's making our job easier. 3 days later, detectives came to the house. They'd reviewed the recording and reopened Margaret's case as a potential homicide. One of them, a young woman with sharp eyes, asked, Did he ever threaten you? Not directly, I said. But he made me feel temporary. Like I could vanish, and he'd just buy flowers for another grave. She nodded. We'll find him. They did, at a storage unit 2 towns over, shredding papers. Inside were Margaret's medical records, old prescriptions, and forged insurance forms. When they cuffed him, he sneered, You can't prove she didn't fall. But they didn't need to. They had his voice. They had Margaret's letter. The next few weeks passed in slow motion. Neighbors whispered. Reporters called. Every night I half expected his truck lights to flash in the driveway. Instead there was only quiet, the sound of rain against the windows like applause from ghosts. Linda came over one evening with a casserole and a cautious smile. You did it, she said. He's behind bars. I didn't do it for revenge, I said. I did it so Margaret could rest. Linda touched my hand. Then maybe now you can too. I wanted to believe her. But a few things still didn't feel finished. 2 Saturdays later, I drove back to the cemetery. The grass was taller, the lilies wilted. I brushed dirt from Margaret's name. It's over, I whispered. He can't hurt anyone again. A light wind moved through the trees, gentle, almost like approval. I placed a white rose beside the headstone, then took the small silver key from my pocket, the one from Frank's storage locker, and buried it near her name. Let the earth keep his secrets now, I said. As I turned to leave, sunlight broke through the clouds, washing the marble in gold. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like second place to a ghost. That evening, a letter waited on my porch. No return address, just my name in a careful, slanted hand. Inside was a single sentence. You may have buried the past, but you didn't bury everything. A photograph fell out. Frank, standing in a prison courtyard, smirking. Beside him, a young woman in a volunteer's badge held his hand through the fence. On the back of the photo, another note, he always finds someone new. The handwriting made my stomach twist. It was Margaret's. The same looping F, the same delicate curls. Impossible, and yet I knew it. I looked out the window. The garden was still, silver in the moonlight. But the wind moved through it softly, like breath. I placed the photo in the same envelope where I'd kept Margaret's first letter and wrote underneath it, If he finds another, I'll find him. Then I sealed it, slid it into my desk drawer, and whispered, Rest easy, Margaret. I'll keep watch. Justice, I realized, isn't a moment. It's a promise you keep until every lie is buried where it belongs. The trial began on a Tuesday morning in late September, the kind of morning that smells like rain and tension. I sat on the hard wooden bench in the courtroom, hands clasped together, trying to remember how to breathe. Across the aisle, Frank sat with his lawyer, wearing a gray suit that didn't quite fit anymore. He'd lost weight. Maybe guilt was finally eating him, though I doubted it. He still had that same tight smile, the one he used when pretending to be the victim. Reporters filled the back rows. I could hear the whispers. That's her. The wife who dug up the grave. They said it like a curse, but I didn't flinch. I had already buried shame with Margaret. All that was left was truth. When the judge entered, everyone rose. The sound of the gavel echoed through the room like thunder trapped in a box. The prosecutor laid out the case, the insurance fraud, the altered death report, the confession caught on Linda's phone. Every sentence landed heavier than the last. Frank sat stiffly, pretending to be calm. When they played the recording, his own voice saying, "I just made sure she didn't get up," the room went completely silent. Even the air seemed to stop. He looked over at me then, eyes glassy, face pale. For the first time since I'd met him, he didn't look like a man in control. He looked like someone cornered by his own lies. When it was my turn to take the stand, I felt every eye in the room press against me. The bailiff swore me in, and the prosecutor asked me to start from the beginning. I told them about the grave visits, the letter, the box, the night I dug. I told them about the fear, the humiliation, the sound of his voice confessing in our dining room. My voice didn't shake. It surprised me. I had been silent for so long that speaking the truth felt almost holy. When the defense cross-examined me, Frank's lawyer tried to twist everything. He said I was jealous, unstable, obsessed with a dead woman. "You dug up a grave, Mrs. Coleman," he sneered. "Would a rational person do that?" I met his stare. "A rational person doesn't marry a murderer," I said softly. A few people gasped. Even the judge's mouth twitched before she asked him to move on. Then they called Frank. He looked smaller up there, stripped of all his charm. He tried to say I'd misunderstood, that his words in the recording were taken out of context. But when the prosecutor pressed him about the life insurance money, the storage locker, the missing medical files, he faltered. "I was just protecting what was mine," he blurted out. "Was Margaret yours?" the prosecutor asked. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. The day dragged on, every question another nail in his coffin. By afternoon, the prosecutor showed the jury Margaret's final letter, the one addressed to whoever finds this. My chest tightened as her words filled the room again. I felt like she was standing there beside me, finally being heard. When court adjourned for lunch, Frank tried to catch my eye as they led him out. "Ellen," he said, voice low, almost pleading. "You don't understand. I never meant to." I turned away before he could finish. Understanding was what killed Margaret. I had no more sympathy to spare. The next day was closing arguments. The prosecutor stood tall, her voice steady. "This case is about betrayal disguised as love," she said. "Margaret Coleman trusted her husband. He used that trust to steal her life and her legacy. Her second victim, Ellen, found the courage to bring that truth to light. That's not revenge, it's justice." Frank's lawyer tried one last time to paint him as broken, misunderstood. But the jury didn't look convinced. They'd seen the arrogance, the greed, the pattern. You can't disguise rot once it's exposed to daylight. When the verdict finally came, I didn't breathe until I heard the words, "Guilty on all counts." The gavel fell again, final and sharp. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just exhaled slow and steady, as if I'd been holding my breath for 10 years. Frank's lawyer put a hand on his shoulder, whispering something, but he didn't move. He looked back at me, searching for pity. I gave him nothing. The bailiff led him away in cuffs, the chain clinking softly like punctuation. Outside, the air felt brighter than it had any right to be. Reporters crowded the steps. "Mrs. Coleman, do you have anything to say?" one of them asked. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved toward my face. "It feels like waking up," I said. "That's all." Then I walked away. Linda was waiting by her car with a single daisy in her hand. She smiled, eyes red. "You did it." "We did it," I said. We stood there for a while, watching the last of the news vans drive off. The courthouse doors closed behind us with a heavy thud, sealing the past where it belonged. That night, I made tea and sat at the kitchen table alone. The silence didn't feel hollow anymore, it felt earned. On the counter sat the same lily vase Frank once used for Margaret's flowers. I poured the water out, rinsed it clean, and placed a white candle inside. When I lit it, the flame flickered gently, casting light across the room. I thought about Margaret, about how she must have felt knowing no one would believe her. I thought about the years I spent living beside a man who loved graves more than people. I whispered into the quiet, "We made it, Margaret. You can rest now." For a long time, I sat there watching the flame dance. But I knew it wasn't really over. Justice had been served, yes, but closure, real closure, was something different. The letter that arrived after his arrest still haunted me. The photo. The handwriting that looked too much like hers. Part of me hoped it was a trick, a cruel prank. Another part of me wasn't so sure. Maybe Margaret had left more behind than anyone realized. Maybe she wasn't done speaking yet. The thought lingered as I blew out the candle, the room falling back into darkness. Next week, they'd start the sentencing. And I'd have to face him one last time. But for now, the night was still. The house was mine again. And for the first time in years, I slept without dreaming of graves. The courthouse was quieter on the day of sentencing. No cameras this time, no reporters waiting on the steps. Just a handful of people, lawyers, court staff, a few curious strangers, and me. I sat near the back, my palms flat on my knees, watching the man I'd once called my husband shuffle in wearing a plain beige jumpsuit. His wrists were cuffed. His hair had gone gray at the temples, but he still carried himself like someone who thought the world owed him understanding. The judge read through the verdict again, voice calm, impersonal. 10 years for insurance fraud. 15 for manslaughter. Additional time for tampering with evidence. Frank didn't flinch at the numbers, only at the words without parole. He glanced back at me then, a flash of something, anger, regret, or just habit. I didn't look away. He'd spent years keeping my eyes down. Now he could live knowing I'd never drop my gaze again. When the sentence was done, the judge asked if either side had anything to say. Frank stood. "I made mistakes," he said, voice hoarse. "But I did love her. Both of them." I felt a slow ache behind my ribs. Even now, he couldn't tell the truth without twisting it. Afterward, outside, Lawson found me sitting on a bench by the fountain. The courthouse doors clanged shut behind us, final as a vault. "It's over," he said quietly. I nodded. "For him, maybe. For you too," he said. "You did something most people never could." "I just told the truth," I said. "It was Margaret who was brave." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe bravery runs in the family." I almost laughed at that. We shook hands, and he walked off down the steps, leaving me alone with the sound of water splashing against stone. That night, I went home and made tea. I opened all the windows. The house smelled clean, new. I turned on no lights, just let the moon fall across the kitchen floor. The silence was deep but not lonely. For once, the quiet didn't feel like waiting. It felt like freedom. Still, when I passed my desk, I stopped. The envelope was there, the one that held the photo of Frank in prison and the strange note signed in Margaret's handwriting. I stared at it for a long time, then slipped it into my purse. The next morning, I drove to the old cemetery. The grass was cut shorter now, the air crisp with early fall. I walked to Margaret's grave, the place where everything had started. I knelt and pressed my hand to the cold stone. "They sentenced him today," I whispered. "You can rest now." The breeze stirred the leaves, gentle, like a sigh. I stayed there a long time, watching the light shift through the trees. When I finally stood, I placed the envelope at the base of her headstone. "Whatever this is," I said softly, "I'm leaving it here with you. I think you've got more to say to each other than I ever will." I turned and walked back to the car, not looking over my shoulder. Some things belong to the past. Some voices are better left in the ground. Weeks passed. Life began to find a strange rhythm again. I fixed up the house, repainted the kitchen, replanted the garden. Linda came by most Sundays with pie and gossip. We talked about everything except Frank. The world felt smaller but lighter, like someone had lifted a weight off it. Then one afternoon, I got a letter from the state prison. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Ellen." I don't expect you to read this. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that the volunteer girl, Faith, is gone. They transferred her. Said she couldn't handle the work. She left me one last thing though. Said it was from Margaret. It was the key you buried at the grave. I don't know how she got it, but it's here. Maybe you were right. Maybe the dead don't rest when the living lie. I see that now. I'm sorry. Frank. I read it twice, then folded it and set it by the candle on the table. For the first time, I didn't feel anger or fear, just a strange, hollow mercy. He was locked away, but somehow the story was still moving through other hands, as if Margaret's unfinished business wasn't done with him yet. That night, I walked into the yard. The moon was high, silvering the edges of the rose bushes. I picked one bloom, white and new, and carried it inside. I set it in the candle holder that used to belong to Margaret's lilies. The flame flickered, soft and steady. I thought about all the Saturdays I'd watched him walk to that grave, flowers in hand, pretending devotion. I thought about the woman beneath the earth, patient, waiting for someone to tell her story right. Now it was done. Before bed, I opened my journal and wrote the last line I would ever write about him. He visited her grave every Saturday, but I was the one who finally listened. I closed the book, blew out the candle, and let the darkness settle. Outside, the wind carried the faint scent of lilies. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once and went quiet again. The night felt clean, as if the world itself had exhaled. I stood for a long time in that silence before whispering the only prayer that still made sense. Rest, Margaret. Rest, Frank. And let me live.